opinions expressed by the host and guests in this show are not necessarily the views of Children's Health Defense.
Good morning, CHD. Happy Sunday. Welcome to This Week with Mary Holland, President of Children's Health Defense, and myself, Polly Tommey. Okay, let's get on, Mary. Michael Nevadakis in The Defender. HHS ousts Peter Marks, sending vaccine stocks tumbling, and Biopharma lamenting loss of ally at FDA. The reaction to the forced resignation of Peter Marks, MD, PhD, and Director of the FDA's agency, responsible for authorizing vaccines by markets and pharmaceutical industry, is indicative of the influence Big Pharma had over the FDA, says Brian Hooker, our Chief Scientific Officer.
Polly, this is great news. Peter Marks resigned technically from being the head for the last 12 years of the Center for Biologic Evaluation Research. I've recently had the opportunity to watch recorded Zoom calls that he had with people who were vaccine injured, severely vaccine injured. And as one of them, Dr. Hertz in this article says, he systematically refused to hear what they were saying. And he kept really just shining them on and saying, oh, yes, we care. We want to know what happened to you. But then he didn't do anything. And he basically silenced them while he was saying, oh, just wait one more month. Oh, we're almost finished with this study. Please be quiet until we come out with the definitive science. And he was just, lying. He, in leaving, as some people said, wrote a love letter to himself saying that it's Bobby Kennedy who's full of, he implied, it's Bobby Kennedy who's full of misinformation and lies. This guy, defended the pharmaceutical industry, not children, not the people of the United States. And glad he's gone.
Yeah, me too. And so is half the internet from what I can see as well. Okay, we're going to go to the Vigilant Fox first. Quote here, we are incorporating an agency within the CDC that is going to specialize in vaccines injuries. This is Robert F. Kennedy Jr. announcing this. For years, the vaccine injured have felt ignored or dismissed as public health agencies refuse to even acknowledge the problem. Now there is finally an initiative underway to investigate their injuries and to provide support. And then just before we go talk about that, the Defender, Michael Nevadakis, did a great write-up on this long overdue crack in the dam, RFK Jr. to create CDC sub-agency focused on vaccine injuries. So that's a great article from Michael.
It is a great article. So this is about how Bobby Kennedy, in an interview with Chris Cuomo at News Nation, says there's going to be this new sub-agency that's going to deal not only with vaccine injury, Polly, but also what's called long COVID and Lyme disease. These are all issues that the mainstream has been ignoring and pretending doesn't exist for decades. And this is fantastic. And they're also going to use the CMS data, the data from Medicaid and Medicare and Vaccine Safety Data Link to really look at this. And this is a part of creating an administration for a healthy America, not just sick care. And as Sayer G is quoted in this article as saying, it really shows us these agencies have been about cartels for pharma. They have not been about protecting the American people. So it's time for thoroughgoing reform, which is really exciting.
Good news. Brenda Belletti in The Defender, PR firm paid conservative social media influencers to bash Robert F. Kennedy Jr.'s plan to exclude soda from SNAP. So several conservative social media influencers were caught accepting money from a public relations firm to oppose reforms to SNAP benefits, the government assistance program formerly known as food stamps. This is the work of investigative journalist Lee Fang.
Yeah, so Lee Fang has been doing some great reporting on these issues. And Robert Kennedy, as the HHS head, says, why should we be paying for these people to poison themselves with ultra-processed food and with sugary drinks? 42 million low-income Americans get food stamps, and we should stop the poisoning. So it doesn't mean you can't have a diet soda or a soda or Doritos if you want them, but we, the taxpayers, shouldn't be subsidizing people getting diabetes and getting sick from non-nutritious food. the article points out that some of these influencers got $1,000 a tweet, Polly. And these beverage companies really focus on hooking kids on these sugary drinks. So I think this is a great step in the right direction.
Okay, Defender Mahava Sethi, MD. Are Physicians Waking Up? Online network for medical professionals runs article criticizing vaccines, voicing support for Robert F. Kennedy Jr. at HHS. Doximity, an online network services for medical professionals, has 2 million registered users, including 80% of physicians in the US.
We love Madhav Sethi, who used to write for Defender during COVID. He's an anesthesiologist. He's also a former aerospace scientist. And he wrote a letter to Doximity saying, I'd like to do an op-ed for you about Bobby Kennedy and why I'm happy. And they were like, yeah, we're not interested. It's too divisive. And then they actually ran his article later, which surprised him. And, you know, maybe doctors are waking up is the headline here. One of the things he says that I really think is thoughtful is even though doctors would like to believe that, you know, there's no connection between autism and other neurodevelopmental issues and vaccines, if vaccines did play a role, this is what we would, in the chronic disease epidemic of children, this is what we would see. We would see over half of American children being sick. So this is a plea to doctors. And he points out he's really been following scientists throughout COVID. Jessica Rose, Sasha Latipova, Igor Chudov, Meryl Nass, you know, Peter McCullough, Nick Hulscher. These are not quacks. These are not marginal people. These are really well-educated scientists and doctors. So love Madhav Sethi's work and really grateful that we wrote this up.
Okay, well, Secretary Kennedy sent a tweet out for World Autism Awareness Day. And he said, I want to recognize the millions of Americans living with autism and their families. The President of the United States has directed me to address and find out what is causing the autism epidemic. HHS is going to do everything in its power to ease the difficulties that so many of the individuals and families face. I never would have thought I would see the day that someone in that position would ever even acknowledge us. It's amazing.
Here we are. It's phenomenal. And they're going to get to the bottom of this, Polly. Both Bobby Kennedy and Donald Trump are really, really serious. They want to figure this out and stop it. Kudos to them.
And if you look in that link, you'll see there's really quite a nice little video of people talking on there with Bobby Kennedy. So go and see it. But yeah, it's a big day for autism parents when the HHS secretary is acknowledging what our children are going through and all of us.
Yes, and telling us that the president has told him as the secretary, get to the bottom of this now.
Yeah, well, we have to.
They've been kicking this under the rug for 40 years. So kudos to these courageous public servants.
This is a tweet from the Secretary for Defense, Pete Hegsworth, and he says it was an honor to welcome Secretary Kennedy to the Pentagon. Together, we will ensure our warfighters are healthy and fit to fight. And Mary, as I said to you, I'm just praying this is the beginning of maybe, please take away the mandated shots for our military, please.
Yeah, it's exciting. I think we're seeing alignment here. And I know this is an issue that Bobby Kennedy really cares about. As he often says, you know, his family lost people for deaths in war. And so he really does care about the health of people who are in the military.
As does Children's Health Defense care deeply about the military.
Yes, and we have our own military chapter that we're very proud of. They've done some really extraordinary work about people in the military and the families in the military. You know, children in the military, families often have a lot of medical issues.
Yeah, and autism is very high in the military.
Very high. Much higher than the general population.
Okay, Brenda Belletti in the Defender. Riding a wave right now. Mary Holland and Del Bigtree discuss future of medical freedom movement under RFK Jr.'s HHS. That was a lovely interview you both did together.
Well, Polly, you inspired it. I was down in Austin and I had the privilege to go over and see the Highwire studio. And we said, why not do an interview? And it was fun. And I think it was interesting because, you know, Del and I, like you and Del, Polly, have been in this a long time. And we sort of compared notes. And, you know, we did sort of say to people in the movement, you know, give the guy a chance. You know, if you thought he was going to show up and on day one and everything that's accumulated that's bad over 50 years, you weren't really being very realistic. So, yeah, we had a nice conversation. It was fun.
Yeah, and Bobby still does not have all his team in place. Remember that?
No, he still doesn't have his whole team in place, Polly. He's almost there. at the very top, but look at what he's done in the interim. He's done a lot. And so we go over what he's done and what he's up against. And it was where we, Del and I in particular reminisced about the Battle of Trenton. He and I were there when we succeeded in not having the religious exemption repealed. And at that point, it looked like, it was definitely going to go down, and thousands of people were out marching in the cold. And we were there for days on end, and Bobby had been there, and Del had been there, and I'd been there. And Del and I were there together when we heard from inside they didn't have the votes. And it was this very, very special moment. And as I said in our conversation, and then 2 months later, there were lockdowns. So we've been through a lot in the last 6 years, all of us.
Defender here, Bhattacharya and Macquarie supported New York City workers fired over COVID vaccine mandates. Plaintiffs in 2 lawsuits, including one filed by Children's Health Defense, challenging New York firing of city workers for refusing COVID-19 vaccines. They're hopeful this week's confirmation of Dr. Jay Bhattacharya and Marty Macquarie to lead top U.S. public health agencies will lead to positive outcomes in the ongoing legal battles.
Actually, Polly, both of these lawsuits in New York City were on behalf of the people who were fired for asserting religious exemptions that were wrongly refused. And we supported both these cases, actually, with attorney Sujata Gibson, one Kane versus de Blasio and the other New Yorkers for Religious Freedom, Religious Liberty. So both these affidavits that Drs. Bhattacharya and Macquarie did in October 2021. So this was early in the whole vaccine insanity. Their affidavit said that the unvaccinated people pose no threat, that natural immunity is at least as good as vaccine-induced immunity, if not better, and that the city should be accommodating people with religious exemptions, not firing them. And as Michael Caine points out in this article, some of those people, Polly, who were wrongfully fired, in our view, some of those people are homeless, they've lost their families, they are really down and out because of this really wrongful action, legally absolutely unjustifiable. So kudos to Bhattacharya and Macquarie, and we really think that they are going to carry on using unbiased science and thinking critically and not just following the herd.
Okay, Defender Michael Nevadakis, mRNA vaccines are linked to genetic changes that can cause cancer and autoimmune disorders. A peer-reviewed study by 19 German researchers links the mRNA COVID-19 vaccines to long-term changes in genetic structures that can provoke an inflammatory response and lead to the onset of cancer and autoimmune disorders. Well, we've seen that, Mary, with our own eyes.
We have, but this is a really interesting article, Polly, about this study by these 19 German researchers that are looking, and Carl, our own Carl Jablinowski, is talking about how these shots alter something called histones in the chromosomes. And the histones apparently are a DNA binding protein that makes DNA 3D. And basically, if you don't have intact histones, it's going to be very difficult to reproduce, whether it's in plants or funguses or animals. And so this is it's one more piece of evidence that says we've got to withdraw these shots now. We don't really know what we're doing, Polly. That's the bottom line.
Okay, this is Big Brother News Watch in the Defender. Court rejects liability claim of a teen's vaccine death. This is the Western Standard reporting. An Ontario judge has dismissed the lawsuit from the family of a high school student who died after receiving a COVID-19 shot. Sean Hartman was only 17 and passed away suddenly 3 weeks after taking Pfizer-BioNTech.
So, Polly, this is a case from Canada. This is like a case that we've brought in the United States on behalf of a 21-year-old. Our case is still in the courts in Washington, D.C. They alleged that that Pfizer had not warned the family about the possible risks to this young adult. And the courts threw it out. So this is like the PrEP Act in Canada. And basically there were PrEP Acts, meaning, full liability protection for the industry, for the doctors, for the governments throughout the world. And this is why we have to overturn the PrEP Act. This is why the PrEP Act is simply incompatible with rule of law. So it's tragic that this 17-year-old died and the family had no idea what they were getting into. It's horrible.
So much death, awful. Well, staying on death, Suzanne Burdick did a great job on writing up about this beautiful baby that died after receiving 6 shots for 12 vaccines. Doctors say catching up kids on vaccines is common and dangerous. Sinair was only 1.
Yeah. So, this is an excellent article. I highly recommend this article. So this baby had not gotten her 6 month shots. She shows up at 1 year. She has a few signs that for people knowledgeable about vaccine injury would delay and would not vaccinate this kid. This kid had eczema, dermatitis, and constipation. But they said, oh, no, it's normal to catch up a baby. So they gave her what they're saying was 6 shots. But let me tell you, by my reading of this, Polly, this was 31 antigens. There were 31 things, right? Pneumococcal itself was 20. MMR is 3. Measles, mumps, rubella. DTaP, diphtheria, tetanus, pertussis is 3. So by my count, they gave this kid 31 different diseases, plus all the additives for her already compromised immune system. She had a runny nose and a cough. Her already compromised immune system is supposed to react to 31 antigens all at the same time. And she died within hours. And what was unique about this situation, Polly, is that the child was in the back of a car. She didn't go to sleep and then not wake up. And they say, oh, it's crib death. This happens all the time. She was having seizures in the car. They took her to the nearest hospital. She had seizures in the hospital. She died of cardiac arrest. And the good news on this is that, autopsies are going on right now. And we are working with this family. This cannot happen, Polly. This is outrageous, but it does happen a lot. It's a great article. It's a great article.
And the interview that we did with the parents is in that article if you missed it. But I just want to pick up on something you just said, which is really important. Most of these babies that are injured, like Sanaya was, from vaccinations, just die in their sleep.
Right.
Thank God we were able to document this. The parents were able to document this, but it happened during the day. But all the babies that wake up, the parents wake up and their babies are dead.
That's exactly right.
Oh, it's just SIDS. So this is why it's kind of unique.
And as Paul Thomas, a pediatrician, points out in the article, this is the 1 year visit is really the most dangerous one because they often pile them up. And the data now is really clear, Polly, that you're more likely to die from the shot than from any of these diseases. People will find out about this and they will ask questions. They won't assume that whatever the nurse or doctor says is the truth.
Yeah, and 27 years ago when Billy had the MMR, that was the only thing on the 1 year schedule. The only thing was that one shot. Look where we are now.
Yeah. Let me just read them off. The shots that she got: DTaP, Hep B, polio, Hib, pneumococcal, varicella, measles, mumps, rubella, hepatitis A. She got all of those shots on one day.
And sodium fluoride, which we talked about with Suzanne on the show as well, which is another toxin. So yeah, disgusting. Okay, well, I'm sure all of you saw Dr. Suzanne Humphries on Rogan. She did a fantastic job. So we've just got Michael Nevadakis has written an article on it and embedded some footage in there for you. His headline is, "We've been lied to. Vaccines did not eradicate polio, researcher tells Joe Rogan. They are based on a fairy tale that ignores the harms vaccines have caused," says Dr. Suzanne Humphries. And she was on the Joe Rogan Experience, if anyone doesn't know what that is. She says, polio is here. It's alive and well. Polio symptoms have been since attributing to other health conditions like Guillain-Barré syndrome, which we've been saying for a long time. Polio never went away.
Never went away. They just renamed it and they recategorized it. A lot of like what stuff that happened during COVID. Yeah, the whole Joe Rogan conversation is linked in this article. Really important conversation. So good that he had her on. So exciting that she was able to come and do that.
Yeah, and just talking about polio for a second, just look around. There's so many children in wheelchairs. There's so many children that are crippled that are using ventilators instead of the iron lung that they call it. So really, it is everywhere. I saw it in England, big time. And when I went to Disneyland, yes, I did go, unfortunately, I've never seen so many children with disabilities. It's ridiculous. Zero Hedge is reporting this, actually. Texas gave 15,000 more MMR shots this year. Now it has more measles cases than the entire US had in 2024. We know that MMR is a live vaccine.
It's a live virus vaccine. Measles is cyclical. Even, if everybody was vaccinated and it worked according to what they say, that's 97% effective, and they don't get that high level of an uptake, and it doesn't work that well. So there's always going to be measles outbreaks at this point, and they're pointing out it's cyclical, and they vaccinated more, and there's a lot more cases. there's going to be measles outbreaks, Polly. You know, they sort of make it sound like the sky is falling, the sky is falling. Well, A, the sky isn't falling, and B, there's nothing in what we are doing right now that's going to stop measles outbreaks. You know, Polly, better than I do, the people on the ground, the people who got their MMR shots 20 years ago, they're getting cases of measles. Right? It doesn't work. It doesn't affect the whole immune system, and people are still susceptible.
There's a really good clip on @Children'sHD on Twitter or X or whatever you want to call it of Ben Edwards, Dr. Ben Edwards, with measles treating the children.
Right. You know, he got his MMR, and he has
MMR. He got a bunch of MMRs, and some of the trolls are saying, oh my goodness, doctor goes in and gives measles to children. No, it was a measles clinic and the children gave measles to Dr. Ben Edwards. Dr. Ben Edwards was fully up to date on his MMR. So something is wrong there. So I wouldn't troll that one if I were you, trolls. It's not going to work for you. Okay, Defender, measles scare in Pima County turns out to be a vaccine reaction. KVOA reports, first of all, the 1-year-old child initially feared to have measles is recovering and now has a 93% protection from the disease due to their first vaccine dose. Pima County Health Department says side effects from the vaccine can resemble measles. They actually said that, well, yes, because it's a live vaccine and she got
it is, they can call it a side effect, but basically the kid got a measles rash, right? The kid's got measles from the measles shot.
Well, Suzanne Burdick, she wrote a really good article in the Defender. Ex-CDC director pushes extra MMR shot for babies as Arizona reports suspected measles case was rare vaccine reaction. Meanwhile, so this is former CDC director Rochelle Walensky. We all know her. She called for an extra dose of this vaccine for babies 6 to 11 months old. I mean, Mary, has she lost her ever-loving mind? No safety studies in this age group at all. None.
None. No data. There's no data backing this up. We know that MMR can cause seizures, anaphylaxis, encephalitis, thrombocytopenia, death. This is so irresponsible. As Carl Jablanowski of our science department says, this is just a knee-jerk reaction to fear. Or more sinisterly, this is her endorsement of the biopharmaceutical complex yet again, which is what she did when she was at CDC.
What's she doing now? I mean, why are we listening to her? Why
she must be in pharma now. I don't know where she is, or maybe she's waiting her 1 year to go be in pharma. We should figure that out. But you know, no surprise.
Horrifying, terrible advice. Please do not listen to that.
Terrible.
Okay, Suzanne Burdick in the Defender. Media reports of vitamin A toxicity in kids being treated for measles is misleading, doctors say. This is, of course, after Robert F. Kennedy Jr., HHS Secretary, recommended vitamin A supplements to treat measles. Axios is reporting some patients have shown signs of vitamin A toxicity, including abnormal liver function. These reports are misleading, Dr. Richard Bartlett says. Abnormal liver function work doesn't necessarily indicate vitamin A toxicity. And before we say anything, Brian Hooker's coming on tomorrow morning to talk about that.
Oh, that's great. So one of the things that this article points out, Polly, that I found really interesting is Weston A. Price, which is a group that we work with a lot and think does really good work. Apparently, Dr. Price, who founded Weston A. Price, found that in indigenous populations, they had 10 times the level of vitamin A that people do today. So I think there's real questions about what should be the right level of vitamin A.
It doesn't ring truth to us that children are being suffering from vitamin A.
That's a cover story. That's a cover story to discredit the treatments that are happening because the treatments are much more effective in taking care of these kids with measles than what the mainstream institutions seem to be doing.
A 4-year-old hospitalized post-measles infection goes home 36 hours after budesonide treatment. This is Lila, and she was admitted to the emergency room of Covenant Children's Hospital in Lubbock on February 28th due to breathing difficulties. 2 days earlier at the same hospital, a 6-year-old girl who also had pneumonia following a measles infection died. We've covered that. The deceased child did not receive any breathing treatments before her death. So this is a really important story.
This is a really important story, Polly. So let me just give people a little bit of the background. So this mother and father take their daughter to the same hospital where the child died, Covenant Hospital. And I guess they only let one person in the car. The mom had to watch the other kids. So she's sitting in the car and she's terrified what's happening to her daughter. And at the Covenant Hospital, they're not giving this child food or water. So the child is crying. The mom is terrified. She calls a doctor who had helped her at Covenant Hospital 12 years earlier. And that doctor says, I'm going to help you. We're going to take your daughter in a helicopter to the Lubbock hospital. A helicopter comes, picks up this child, takes her to a different hospital. Immediately at the second hospital in Lubbock, they give this child food and medicine, and they give this child a breathing treatment, budesonide, a steroid, to open up her pathways to breathe. And she's home in 36 hours. This girl survived, and I think it's fair to say, based on the child that died 2 days before and the fact that they're starving this child of food and water and not giving her breathing treatments, this child probably would have met a bad fate had she stayed at the Covenant Hospital. This is definitely something we're going to bear in mind, and we need to look more into this, Polly.
And I'm sure many of our viewers are thinking about the hospital protocol as we are talking about this for COVID.
Yes.
It's so similar. Okay, this is US news here. 2 Louisiana infants die of whooping cough amid drop in vaccinations. Well, I'm not really going to read any more into that article, but my question is, did they really die of whooping cough? And it doesn't really give much information in it. It just says they died. It's like a fear-mongering thing. So it'd be good to get the hospital records of the 2 infants that died.
Agreed.
Find out exactly what happened. Not liking where all of this is going.
Well, Polly, this is obviously a pushback against changes that really do put the vaccine program under questions. And so, of course, our adversaries in this, their best weapon is fear. And so if there are deaths from whooping cough, deaths from measles, deaths from rabies, all of these things are really what is needed to keep people in fear and say, oh, well, whatever the doctor says, I will do whatever the doctor says because the world is so scary. It's to be expected. We know this.
All right. Well, we have the big fat lie article of the week, and this is AP News. Shingles is awful, but here's another reason to get vaccinated. It may fight dementia. So a vaccine to fight dementia, says the article. It turns out there may already be one. It's the most ridiculous article ever.
Polly, I'm gonna push back on you here. What's interesting here to me, and I'm seeing this in some threads that I'm on, and I've sent this to our Chief Science Officer, Brian Hooker, to really do a deeper dive. I'm not saying to go out and get a shingles vaccine, but what did the chickenpox vaccine that is now widespread around the country, what were the after effects of that? Children stopped getting chickenpox before this. As you know, in the UK, children still get chickenpox, and adults weren't getting boosted from their immunity against chickenpox. So maybe what this finding is finding, and it's a big study, is these are the unanticipated consequences of not having live viral infections. So I'm not endorsing the Shingrix vaccine, but this may be dementia. The level of dementia that we're facing in society may be related to the fact that we're vaccinating children and we're not allowing their immune systems and their neuroimmune systems to develop adequately. We don't know, but I actually think this data may be real. And this is not, to me, saying go get your Shingrix vaccine. It's saying this is an unintended consequence of not letting people get chickenpox as children when it's completely harmless. So anyway, I don't know that,
but the only thing I've ever seen from these vaccines is dementia-like symptoms, like Billy has and all the others. I mean, there's no doubt in my mind, you take the shingles shot, you're probably going to get dementia. Right,
but Polly, had Billy had measles and chickenpox and not taken shots, he would have developed his immune system, including his neuroimmune system.
Right.
So that's what I'm saying. I'm not talking about the shingles. I'm talking about what was the side effect of suppressing viral infections in childhood. This may be an effect of that. We don't know.
But they're calling it a vaccine to fight dementia. That's not
right.
Well,
they're just trying to sell vaccines, Polly. They're always going to try to sell vaccines and tell people that the world is so scary if you don't take all the vaccines they recommend. They're never going to change their narrative, ever.
So just to be clear, no one's endorsing any vaccine right now, okay? Yeah. People listening, you're so confused by that. All right, this is weird. So I just flagged this to Mary this week. So last week, remember, we had someone who died from rabies from an organ transplant. This week, weird. Woman dies from rabies after drinking contaminated milk in extremely rare case. This is an Indian woman who drank raw milk. Of course, it was raw milk, and she died of rabies. It goes on to say pasteurized milk is safe, raw milk's not. Rabies is deadly and horrific. However, most hospitals, they say, will stop rabies treatments and vaccines. I don't really know what to make of it.
There's got to be a new rabies vaccines for dogs coming out. Allegedly, this cow had been bitten by a rabid dog. I was actually just doing some research. Apparently, there's not been a rabies case in dogs since 2007. So there's something very weird about this story, Polly. And let's keep following it. There may be a new rabies vaccine coming out. That's my guess.
Sum things up, Mary.
Yeah, I agree.
Okay, Brenda Belletti in The Defender. Supporters call on Idaho lawmakers to override governor's veto of bill prohibiting medical mandates. And this is Idaho Governor Brad Little. He vetoed a bill passed by Idaho lawmakers that would have prohibited nearly all medical mandates in the state. Critics say the veto wasn't completely surprising given Little's draconian COVID-19 policies. They're calling on legislators to override the veto.
Polly, this is really exciting. This is like a fight to the finish in Idaho, which arguably is the most health freedom friendly state in the country. This would basically say there can be no mandates that would keep anybody out of any job or out of any school. Leslie Manoukian at Health Freedom Defense Fund, who was the instrumental person in this bill, she says that Little was totally hypocritical during COVID. She says she observed him like in a room with no masks on, and then they put on masks for the public, and he's a total hypocrite. And, if they don't override the veto, Dr. Ryan Cole, the pathologist, has said he's going to run for governor. So it's a showdown in Idaho. It's exciting.
Okay, Brenda Belletti in The Defender. Utah becomes first state to ban fluoride in public drinking water. Scientific experts say they will have more positive benefits for health, especially among children. So well done, Utah. We've covered this before, but there we go.
Yeah, it takes effect May 7th. Very exciting. Basically, half the state gets fluoridated water, half doesn't. There's no difference in terms of kids' teeth, and we know that causes neurodevelopmental harms. So kudos to Utah. Hopefully it's a precedent for other states.
Yeah, well, staying with fluoride, Brenda Belletti, water fluoridation linked to autism and other neurodevelopment delays in a new study. Children exposed to fluoridated water in the first 10 years of life had a lower risk for tooth decay, but a higher risk for developing several serious neurodevelopment disorders, according to a peer-reviewed study in BMC Pediatrics.
It's a toxic byproduct. I mean, fluoride is not good for you.
No, and as Brian Hooker and I were talking about the other day on Good Morning CHD, we have never said that autism is the only vaccines are the only cause.
Oh, absolutely not. It's not the only route. I mean, I don't know about you, Polly, but I know many families that did not vaccinate their children who have children on the spectrum. So it's not the only route. It's probably the most common one. I certainly deeply believe it's the most common route to autism. Most of the cases are regressive, and we know that vaccines are associated with regressive autism. So
I actually have only met one woman that came to the bus saying that she'd had no vaccines.
I've met many. I have met many. And in families where, especially with multiple children with autism, where the first couple were vaccine injured and then they stopped, I do know families where the youngest children were not vaccinated, but they are on the autism spectrum, some of them severely.
We are getting a lot of speech delays, though, coming in the unvaccinated families at the moment. So something else is going on, for sure. Yeah. There's no doubt about it. It's not just vaccines, but just so happens there's a lot of vaccine injuries.
Oh, I think it's the driver. There's no doubt in my mind, Polly, based on the science and based on work that, Bobby Kennedy and Brian Hooker have done and Unvax and other people. There's no doubt in my mind that the driving cause of the autism epidemic is vaccines, probably accounting for about 80% of all the cases right now.
I think there's going to be a few studies on that coming out soon. Well, Mary, this is your article here in The Defender. We can end the autism epidemic by telling the truth. Let's honor autistic children and adults everywhere by demanding our federal agencies unlock the 4 decades of data that hold the secrets to why autism rates are soaring. So we can end the autism epidemic once and for all. It's a very good article, Mary.
Thank you. Lots of help. Yeah, we just have to look at the data. Polly, I don't think we need to do, I mean, I think we should do some new studies. I think we should do some prospective studies, but there's millions of medical records. We know from the Lazarus study in 2010 that found through machine learning that 1 in 39 cases in a health maintenance organization had some kind of vaccine side effect. We know that this data is going to really help to explain to us what's going on. And the schedule is just crazy, right? It's, Hep B, Hib, DTaP, IPV, MMR, varicella, rotavirus, RSV, PCV, flu, COVID being the last. That's crazy. There's no science behind that. And as the article points out, there's at least 10 ingredients in each one of these. It's a $69 billion industry every year, not counting COVID. There have been no deaths from measles. There were 42 deaths reported in VAERS, almost 3,000 severe adverse events. And we know that that's likely about 1%. So we're talking thousands of people are dying from the MMR vaccine every year, likely. And this is not reported. Because why? Because it's not in line with what the pharmaceutical industry wants. So we are, with the current situation, we are going to get to the bottom of this, Polly, and long overdue, but thankfully it's going to happen. The article says, why is pharma so up in arms? And we have to understand they're going to keep going after us and Bobby and ramping up the fear. They're fearful that crimes are going to be exposed. They're fearful that their obscene profits are going to dry up. And they're fearful that they won't be able to bully parents into complying anymore. The jig is up and we're going to see massive pushback. Right? Bobby has just created this sub-agency for vaccine injury. They are petrified, Polly. There are going to be consequences now. The world is going to see the truth. And it's scary to them. I mean, it should be.
Yeah, all those pediatricians out there listening right now, you need to get on the right side fast. But also not to mention vitamin K and the ROGAM and all the other toxins go into babies. So there's a lot going on. Well, Mary, you're going to address childhood health crisis at the Vermont State House.
Yeah, very exciting. So our CHD New England chapter and sort of the subgroup, the Vermont people in Vermont Stands Up, have organized for me to meet with legislators at the Vermont Capitol in Montpelier on Wednesday. And I'm really excited about this. I am happy to travel to any place to meet with legislators, to meet with groups. And, I've been to Vermont before. I was in Vermont in January, and it's very exciting to go and have the opportunity to help really answer questions and talk to people of different persuasions. I'm really excited that this is possible.
And also, you're really good at it.
Well, I try, Polly. I try. I really believe that everybody, Polly, as Bobby ran on the idea of heal the divide and we have to love our children more than we hate one another. I really believe that we all want children to be healthy. I really believe that. I think there are a few bad actors who are making lots of money, but I really believe that people do have goodwill. And so we need to have conversations. We need to have dialogue.
Yes, we do. Well, thank you for doing that, Mary. Well, now listen, the Defender have a call out here. Share your autism story this month. April is this Autism Awareness Month, and every day is Autism Awareness Day for all of us. But if you have a story and you want to share it with the Defender, please do. There's a form there for you to fill it in, telling you how to do it. And they're saying not just, the vaccines cause autism, but if you want to talk about the struggles of living with autism, anything at all, do write in and put it in, because they're going to do something really special with that. And I think it's important that we, the parents, keep shouting out that life is not a bed of roses or bowl of roses. When you live with adults with autism, it's hard. It's really hard for them and for us.
I agree. And all the focus up until now, Polly, in our movement has been on children appropriately. But people are children for 20 years and they're adults for 60 years. And Polly, at Autism Trust, and I work with this, it's caring for these adults. These adults didn't exist 20, 30, 40 years ago. We don't have the infrastructure, and we need to be thinking about it, talking about it, and acknowledging there's this huge need out there that's going to have to be met. And it's dangerous right now. It's really dangerous for these young adults whose parents will not live forever. We don't have a pathway for them. Most of these adults are not going to be employable. Or we're going to have to invent the ways in which they can be employable. They don't exist today. So there's a lot to be done in this space, and we absolutely want to hear your stories. One of the things that the administration is going to be doing is having commissions go around, the MAHA commission go around the country. But we can help jumpstart that. We can give them ideas, and we can even connect them to people. So please, we're very eager to hear what you're dealing with. What are your stories? What's true for you and your family?
That's right. Look forward to that. And we have to address what's going to happen when we're not around and who's going to look after our children. As Brian Hooker talked about the other day, it's a serious situation. So yeah, talk to us and let's see if we can all get together and come up with some answers. Yeah, as we always have been doing.
Yes, we will. We will, Polly. I don't know how, but we will.
A lot of you writing to us asking if why we haven't got the introducing homeopathy on our movie section. Well, that's what they wanted, just to put it out then. At that time, but they are bringing it back because so many of you want it back again. So it's going to stream April the 10th to the 18th. It's going to be free again. You just have to sign up for it. So there's a link in here for you to be able to do that. But yeah, it's coming back for a week or so.
And it's a fantastic film. Please watch it if you haven't watched it. It's really uplifting, really exciting. Actually, Polly, I just did an interview that'll show in a week or so about bioregulatory medicine. I really feel like we're opening up for people these other pathways to healing. And it's very exciting for me to learn about this, but also to share that with people.
Yeah, and Children's Health Defense does not give out medical advice, but we do listen to people. And especially, again, you parents, we want to hear what's worked for you. It's your story, so always good to hear that. Well, now, just to remind you all, VAX 3. So in our movie section at CHD TV, VAX 1, 2, 3, and load of movies are on there, and it's all free for you. But VAX 3 is in Spanish and Japanese subtitles. VAX 2, we've just put on to CHD TV, is in Spanish and French subtitles. So do send them to the people that need to see them in those languages. It's the movie section again, CHD TV says that. And so, Mary, that was quite a show. It's a lot of good news in there.
There's a lot of good news in there, Polly. It's always mixed, but there's a lot of good news always.
Yeah. And of course, our hearts go out to the Mennonite community with all they're dealing with right now and the parents of this 1-year-old that tragically was killed by these vaccines. And a great many of you, if you've got a story and you want us to tell it, come to us at CHD TV or The Defender, either or, both, whatever. And we will cover these stories for you because it's so important that we speak out the truth, because we've just seen the mainstream media are going to just
they're going to keep doing their thing.
Died of measles. That's what they said. And so people went out and got MMRs because they were so afraid. Well, she didn't die of measles, in fact. So we have to become the media.
We are the media, Polly. We're the media.
That's quite right. All right, we're going to have our MMR. Actually, we stopped the MMR stories. You may still hear them. We're now going into just general vaccine injury and autism stories. But we're going to kick off today with, this is Heather, and she is still an RN, but she says she'll never, ever vaccinate again. And she used to vaccinate. That was her job, vaccinate. So listen to what she says and why she's come to the decision to never vaccinate anybody ever again. So you can hear from Heather now. But for Mary and I, pray big, stand firm, never settle. And I'll see you tomorrow on Good Morning CHD.
Thanks, Polly. Thanks, everybody. Have a great week. See you next week.
I worked in the emergency department for quite a few years. I've also worked in OB.
And emergency department. Did you give vaccinations yourself? Did you actually administer them yourself?
Yes. I can't tell you how many tetanus shots I've given. Hundreds.
And now that you know what you know, and you've done all the research, just jump ahead a second. Do you look back at those tetanus shots and think, why did they, it's not your fault, did they train me to think that that's what they should have had?
Yes. In fact, since my son was born, he's 4.5 now, and he was vaccine injured, so I started to research, but I have not gone back to work and would never be able to return to my profession knowing what I know now after the research I've done. I would never be able to go back and give vaccinations or just follow the whole paradigm of mainstream medicine and the treatments given now, knowing what I know.
So what were you taught when you were training to be an RM? What were you taught about vaccines?
Nothing.
Because they expect you guys to give them. They
yes,
should teach you.
They teach us how to give them, the technique to use, and the schedule. That's it, really.
And you say you've given countless tetanus jabs.
Oh,
And when you
hundreds.
say tetanus, you mean the Tdap or the Ddap?
Yeah, it was TD we usually gave.
To the adults or whatever
Yes.
came in.
Yep.
And so what kind of injuries? So just anything, and it was just standard?
Oh, anything. If you, were in the kitchen and nicked yourself with your own knife that had just come out of the dishwasher, you got a tetanus shot. Any break in the skin was a tetanus shot automatically.
And some people report when they come to these interviews that they go into hospital for something completely different, broken leg, anything, and it's, are you up to date? No, well, let's just give you one anyway. It's like really encouraged.
Yes, we only gave them for instances when there actually was a break in the skin, but it is very encouraged to get a tetanus shot if you have any risk, what they call risk whatsoever.
Okay, so when did you wake up? Was it just with this beautiful boy behind?
My 4-year-old, yes.
So your youngest child?
My youngest
And
child.
How many you got?
I have 4 total. I have 2 that are grown up and out on their own, and I have a 13-year-old and a 4-year-old that are.
And all of them are fully vaccinated?
Yes.
Because you truly believe that vaccines were safe and effective?
I truly believe that vaccines were safe and effective, yes.
Okay, so what happened for you to find out the truth? Do tell us. We're waiting.
All right. My youngest one was born very prematurely. He was born at 25 weeks. He was 1 pound 11 ounces at birth. Now, they didn't give him the hepatitis B shot the day of birth like they do most infants in America. They waited until he was 1 month old. And at that point, he had just regained his birth weight of 1 pound 11 ounces. So I don't know if you can see here, but this is a picture of him.
Oh yeah, please can we show? Oh, he's tiny.
At 1
Look
pound
that.
11 ounces when he received his first hepatitis B vaccine, which
1 pound
11 ounces. So
11
if you want a
ounces.
perspective, picture a full-size submarine sandwich, and that is his exact size. He was 1 foot long, and so a 1 foot sub sandwich was his size.
And they gave him Hep B.
they gave him hep B.
And you were fine because you're a nurse and you were trained that vaccines are safe and effective. Or did you have a gut feeling?
I had a gut feeling, and I questioned them, but I'm still, I didn't know at that time that I had a choice. I mean, I was just so brainwashed with the whole, the way things are in medicine that I was like, I just thought I had to do this, even though I had a gut feeling that it wasn't the right thing to do.
And even at the times, the doctors in the NICU, which we were in, acknowledged that there would actually be a deterioration of his current condition post the shot.
They said he may have respiratory
Yeah.
difficulties afterwards,
That it's
and
not
warned us
unusual.
of that.
You've got to wonder about the intelligence of these people, have you not?
Yeah.
They actually said it was expected behavior post it.
Then why are we doing it?
Exactly.
Wow.
Especially because hepatitis B is a sexually transmitted disease that my 1 pound infant had 0 chance of contracting. So, and again, with the 250 micrograms of aluminum. So he received that at 1 month old. Now he was still in the NICU at 2 months. At this time, he was, he got his Grammy, which in the NICU is an award they get when they reach 1,000 grams, which is 2 pounds 2 ounces.
He got an award for being 2 pounds 2 ounces.
Yes,
They
it's his
call it.
Grammy because he reached 1,000 grams. So he was given his 2-month vaccines 3 days later.
Whoa.
And this is still 6 months, or 6 weeks, before he should have even been born.
So
this
wait,
is-
so he's still in the NICU
He's still in the NICU.
and he weighs how much?
He weighs 2 pounds 2 ounces.
And they want to vaccinate him
Again,
with his 2-month vaccines.
Mhm.
And do you know what those 2-month vaccines were?
They were, I have it on here.
Do you know how lucky you are that your boy is alive?
Yes, I do now. He got the Hib, Pediarix, and Prevnar. This is
He got Prevnar at how many? 2 pounds?
at 2
2
pounds.
pounds 2 ounces.
They gave that. You know what is that? Is a jailable thing. They gave this 2 pound 2 ounce baby Prevnar on top of others, but Prevnar, the lethal vaccine from hell. And what else did they give him?
Hib and Pediarix.
And keep in mind too that all of these vaccines occurred long before he was even supposed to be due, which
Born,
would have
yeah.
been in March of 2013, but he was actually born in December. So when we talk about a month, we're talking January, and then if we're talking about 2 months, we're talking about February. So it was long before he was even, expected to be born that he was getting these. So the developmental cycle wasn't there.
This is when I was technically 34 weeks pregnant
Yeah.
that he received his 2-month vaccines. So he was in the NICU.
I can't believe he survived. I can't believe he survived that, guys. At £2 to have all that.
They gave him to all the babies. All the babies got their full vaccines.
He's okay. If you're okay with him. There he is, the child that survived all those ghastly vaccines at £2. Hello.
Can you go watch YouTube for a little while?
No.
I'll give you a snack. How's that sound?
Put me down.
Put me down, Dad.
It's a Power Ranger.
Okay.
So, we had an incredibly hard time getting him out of the NICU. We got to a point where he was absolutely stable. They keep him on 24-hour-day continuous monitoring. So with preemies, they will have desaturations, oxygen desaturations, and Brady's, where the heart rate drops. He had not had any of these at all. I mean, 0 for over 3 weeks. They would only let me breastfeed once a day. Now I was pumping and freezing.
They would only let you breastfeed
only
your
l-
baby once a day. Why? What's the problem with you going into breastfeed as normal?
The problem he had was he was not gaining weight at all. So their explanation was that breastfeeding expended too much energy for him to eat to get his calories. So I was giving him expressed breast milk in a bottle instead of letting him actually breastfeed at the breast. So it got to the point where they just wouldn't let him go. He had no medical issues. They were doing nothing for him medically that I could not do at home. I started kind of getting a little argumentative with the doctors, and not argumentative, but just, why are we keeping him here? Why can't I bring him home? And they told me that pediatricians do not like it if the babies are not gaining a certain amount of weight a day. So until he is gaining, I think it was half an ounce. Was that what, half an ounce a day?
That's what it was.
He will not be discharged. And they convinced me at this. Now, my baby's been in here for 3.5 months now. At this time, I was pretty desperate to get him out of there and get him home. I said, I'll just get him home and do what I need to do with him. They wanted to mix half breast milk and half formula. So I agreed to that, to get him out, to get him home. So that's what he started having. Meanwhile, I'd been exclusively pumping for 3.5 months. My milk supply I lost my milk supply the week before he came home from the hospital. Dried up. I had enough breast milk that we actually did the half breast milk, half formula for until he was 9 months old. I had enough stored. But anyway, so we get home. He went for his well checkup about 3 weeks after we'd been home, his 4-month well checkup, and got his 4-month vaccines. So, about a week after he had his 4-month vaccines, we had a monitor.
Do you know how much he weighed at his 4 months?
He was, 3 pounds. He was 3 pounds something.
At 4 months, he was 3 pounds something, and he had more vaccines.
Actually, I think he was 5 pounds. I think I told you wrong.
5 pounds still. That's just lighter than any baby I've ever had. Could you tell us what he had when he was given his 4 month vaccines at 5 pounds?
He had pneumococcal and Prevnar.
Bloody Prevnar again. Why are they giving him all this Prevnar?
Yes, well, I actually, I have part of the, after the fact when I started researching, I have the part of the insert from the Prevnar, and it actually states right on there, it says, warnings and precautions. Apnea following intramuscular vaccination has been observed in some infants born prematurely. Decisions about when to administer an intramuscular vaccine, including Prevnar 13 to infants born prematurely, should be based on consideration of the individual infant's medical status and potential benefits and risks. So what happened to my son was he had numerous episodes where he stopped breathing. We had a monitor at home that was a motion monitor that monitored his breathing pattern, and twice during the week after these vaccinations, it went off. It alarmed. I ran in, scooped him up. He started breathing. He then had episodes where I caught him sitting in his little baby chair one day next to me, and I looked over and he just had this look of panic and fear in his eye. And I just looked at him, and all of a sudden he wasn't breathing. He was struggling to breathe, and it was like he couldn't take a breath, and you could just see the fear in his eyes. And I reached, I went over and I grabbed him and started pounding on his back. I had the bulb suction, and I was trying to suction him because it appeared that he was choking. But he finally came out of it, started gasping for breath, and started breathing again. So this happened a total of 3 times. He was rehospitalized exactly 14 days after his 4-month vaccinations for these episodes of not breathing. And he had a witnessed event in the hospital where he stopped breathing and turned blue, and they were, starting to resuscitate him.
What did the medical professionals say to you about this?
They said he had reflux.
So, but did you bring up the fact that, these vaccines?
I didn't. At this time, it never even entered my consciousness at all. I never
Isn't that
even thought about
interesting,
it.
though?
I was so brainwashed. I was so much a part of the mainstream medical,
There was not even any question about it. It was, it was just all attributed to reflux, and that was essentially it. But, really, the whole time we were there, they really never had any good answers.
No.
Themselves. I think they chalked it up, the reflux, as as a standby or an old standard for this type of behavior, even though it's not necessarily true.
So I was looking, when I went back and looked at the insert for, again, the Prevnar, it also states pediatric use, safety and effectiveness in Prevnar 13 in children below the age of 6 weeks have not been established. So the time he got his 4-month vaccinations, he was technically, going by what age he should have been, only 4 weeks old. So that's medical experimentation without informed consent. Twice he was given a vaccine that was not approved for his age range before he was 6 weeks old. Pentacel also says the same thing. Not approved under 6 weeks of age. So,
we've got to be able to get these people on medical negligence. We have to be able to do that.
you would think so. You would think so. Because
has anyone ever tried? Have we ever had anyone ever try and do this? We talk about it all the time.
I don't know, but I'd be willing to investigate that.
Thank you.
Yeah. So
we should be able to just get them on the fact that they say vaccines are safe and effective, when actually the CDC does not say that.
yeah. Well, preemies are always, anything medical whatsoever or developmentally, they're always assessed on their adjusted age, never on their biological age. They're always assessed on their gestational age, except for vaccines. So, like for his developmental milestones, he was always expected for his adjusted age, like how old he should have been, as opposed to how old he really was because he was born so early. The only place that is not applied is in vaccines. So, if you read the inserts on some of these, like I have from Pentacel and Prevnar. Pentacel, some of the reported side effects are cyanosis, apnea, fever, lethargy, inconsolable crying. It goes on and on. There's all sorts of... But the cyanosis and apnea was exactly what happened with him. The Prevnar, some of them were acute gastroenteritis, choking, apnea.
Just for the person who keeps asking over and over again about Prevnar, the reason we speak about anything is because Prevnar has come up ridiculous amount of times as being the vaccine given to babies that are very, very little or toddlers, and each time when there's a Prevnar involved, there's a massive injury. So it's just the people study, collecting the people's stuff. I'm not saying it's worse than anything else, it's just that we're hearing Prevnar, and everything to do with Prevnar is huge injury, not just mentally but physically, not being able to walk afterwards. Massive injury coming from Prevnar, as reported by the parents. Carol.
Okay. So that was, we went home on a monitor. He gradually, recovered, stopped having these episodes. Life went on. We continued to vaccinate him. He got his MMR at 12 months, which actually was only 9 months for him. but he got it right on time at 12 months. The time he got his MMR, he was saying one word, which was okay because he was, expected to be developmentally delayed. Now, after he got his MMR, I went back and got his records from his pediatrician and have looked through them. And immediately after receiving the MMR, he started having ear infections. He had 8 sick visits in the 3 months following his MMR. Ear infection, fever, wheezy cough, vomiting, bronchiolitis, wheezy, was started on nebs, just sick. He was sick continuously for 3 months following his 12-month vaccinations. So it came time for his 15 months. When I did go into his 15-month appointment, I told them I had some
John,
Yeah.
can you take Billy outside? He's really hot in here. It's like sweating bucket.
Oh well.
Sorry guys. Sorry everyone, carry on.
Sorry. I had some, it's in his notes from his pediatrician that I declined, I wanted to postpone his vaccinations that day because I felt he was off, like he might be coming down with something. So he had 4 words at that time. 16 months, he did get his vaccinations. And he got DTaP and Hep B at that time. We were leaving on a cross-country road trip. We drove from New York to California and back. It was a 4-week trip. Coming back, he developed a very high fever, became lethargic. I was actually on the loneliest road in Nevada. There was no type of facilities or stores or anything for quite a long way. It was a little nerve-wracking. But he had this fever. We had him seen in an emergency room a couple days later. They did blood work, they did urine tests. There was no reason they could find for the fever. He didn't have congestion, didn't have anything going on. Fever lasted another 6 days after that. I had him seen again in Missouri. They gave him antibiotics. They said he possibly had an ear infection starting. Came home, continued to have a high fever, and was diagnosed with hand, foot, and mouth disease. Another ear infection. So at this point he got an ENT referral and was going to get tubes placed in his ears. Now about this time, and it was gradual, it wasn't all of a sudden this happened, but during this time he had had 4 or 5 words and he had lost them. He stopped following commands. He started having major temper tantrums. He stopped waving goodbye. Also at this time he kept failing his hearing screenings. So, they were going to put tubes in his ear. I was like, oh, well, that's why he can't talk, because he can't hear. We're going to put tubes in. Everything's going to be great. Everything's going to be wonderful. I was fully expecting when he got the tubes put in his ear that he would immediately start talking. And he didn't. He got the tubes placed in August. Nothing changed. Absolutely nothing. So, he was about 2.5. Well, actually, it was later that year. Before he turned 2, he started getting chronic diarrhea. And he'd have diapers just full of undigested food. I took him numerous times in to the pediatrician. They're like, oh, it's toddler's diarrhea. It's nothing.
It's toddler's diarrhea.
Yeah.
Yes. We all got diarrhea.
It's normal to have undigested food in your stool. I'm like, no, I don't think you understand. You can literally see what he ate at his last meal in his diaper every time he eats.
It's normal, love.
So I took him like 4 or 5 times to the doctor for that. He started with the bright red cheeks, and I tried explaining to them. I'm like, look, it's not there all the time, but when he eats certain things, his cheeks turn bright red, and it gets under his chin, and sometimes in his diaper, he'll have this like inflamed red rash, which will go away in a couple hours later after I clean him up. So I started researching, and I originally started looking at food, and we ended up learning a lot about food and diet and going on a whole foods diet, things like that. He did have, there was one morning, the diarrhea continued. My husband, I'll never forget, it was Black Friday. My husband got him up in the morning and started screaming. I mean, literally screaming.
Really?
Like, I was terrified. I've never heard my husband, like, screaming my name for me. and I went running up the stairs, and my son had a roundworm alive that was coming out, and I had to remove the roundworm from his body, and he had a 20-centimeter roundworm.
What?
Yeah,
His
that's
digestive tract was so damaged that he was able to have a 20-centimeter roundworm living in his digestive tract, and I had taken him to the pediatrician numerous times and told them there is something wrong here. But I mean, that's not normal. It's rare. The only way that's going to happen is if you have a child with a severely damaged intestinal tract. You know, he was damaged. And it's, you know,
That's freaky scary. Did you
Yeah,
frame
that's
it?
how come I laugh. That's how come I like giggle about it, because I remember it was just like I didn't know what it was.
he's still traumatized. I don't
Yeah.
think he'll ever.
Yeah, you get post-traumatic stress disorder from that one. That's
Yeah, that
awful.
was a tough one.
And then we took it to the doctor. We put it in a plastic
How
bag.
big? Show the peeps how big that is. Really that big?
Mhm.
How wide?
It was, like, you know, it was.
What the...
So we took him to the doctor's office, and they kind of like laughed about it. They were like, "Wow, that's impressive to get something that size out of a."
Oh, now it's
Yeah.
not just normal, but impressive.
Yeah.
But they weren't concerned at all about how this happened or why this happened. They were just like, "Wow," you know.
Yay. These peeps.
So you know, he was a sick kid. I started doing research at that point. I suspected at some point in my research that he had food allergies with the red cheeks, you know, the eczema and stuff. And so I decided to put him on an elimination diet. This is when he's 2.5 years old.
Mm-hmm.
And I had read about, you know, I was starting to question vaccines at this time. I'd done some research, and I had read about autism, and I had read about the treatment for autism being gluten-free, dairy-free diets and things of that nature. So I took away all foods except for like brown rice, sweet potatoes, broccoli, and started adding things in one by one to try and figure out
Right.
what was causing the problems. 3 weeks into the diet, he started talking, and he has never stopped since. I mean, just the way his language took off was unbelievable. And it was 3 weeks after cutting out gluten, dairy, and all the other bad things. 6 weeks into the diet, he stopped banging his head on the floor, because that was another thing that I had talked to the doctor about. Oh, it's normal. These extreme temper tantrums, they're normal. I've raised 4 kids. I knew it wasn't normal. But again, denial is a powerful thing too, because I should have known earlier than I did, but I didn't. And then 8 weeks in, I'll always remember this moment also, he started calling me. He's like, "Come here, come here, come here." And I went in the room. He says, "Look, he's snuggling." And then it just hit me. This was the first time he'd ever snuggled. It was 8 weeks after starting the diet, and
Interesting.
it just hit me right then. And like, he has autism. I knew. And so we've continued to work with diet and, you know, some targeted supplements, and he's come a long way. He's recovered quite a bit. He has excellent language now. He still has a lot of behavioral issues, you know, things like that.
So is there anything that would make you guys vaccinate yourselves or your peeps again?
No.
And you're an RN. You're trained
RN.
to vaccinate people.
Yes,
You're
but
trained on the dark side.
I've done my research. I've seen the science. The science is there. It's just never looked at by the people that,
You mean the good science is there?
yeah.
There's science, and then there's the dark pharmaceutical science.
Yes.
There's 2 different types of science here.
Hmm.
Well, at least you're over on our side now.
Yes.
That's one good thing about all of this is you've got one big new family
Yes. I do.
that love you. And your boy, I cannot get over that he's still here. From all the stories that we are told, that story would have ended in death.
He almost did quite a few times after his 4-month shots. There was quite a few times it could have ended very differently. There was a period of time for a week when neither I nor him, you know, we took turns sleeping. We would just sit and stare at this 4-month-old baby to make sure he was breathing, because he didn't make any noise during these episodes when he stopped breathing. He just,
We actually moved. We had a little bassinet that we actually put right next to the bed. Remember that? And then we'd put the motion sensors underneath that. So literally, we're in the same room with him with the motion sensors and everything else. And
and we had a chair there. One of
Yeah.
us would sit up and watch, and
So now how old is he now?
he's 4.5.
He's 4.5. Now, do we have any problems from this mass vaccine schedule that your poor boys had from £1?
Well, he still has issues. You know, he does have autism. He's very high functioning, which I am thankful for, very, very thankful for. He has a lot of behavior issues. Like, one of the things, I can't take him into a grocery store unless he's strapped into a cart, because he will just run through the store. He will, you know, grab things off the shelf. He has
So unaware of danger around him, or the danger that he's in.
yeah.
Right, exactly. Exactly. And even, like, I don't know if you've seen us out here where, you know, we'll be chatting fine, he'll be talking to somebody, and then he'll suddenly, you know, do the drop to the ground. I'm not moving, screaming. I having a new agenda that's different from mom and dad's, and I'm going to go in this direction. So it's the constant battle back and forth with that, which is, you know, typical of this, of the damage.
And he's so young, there's so much that can be done there. Now you're all over on the right side and mixing with those peeps out there. All sorts of good things are going to happen. Now, so as an RN, you didn't know. You went out there to help people. You thought by giving them tetanus jabs that you were actually doing the right thing.
Yes. And I can tell you too that somewhere I must have stored things in my subconscious. Yeah. It didn't register with me at the time. And I think this says a lot for the medical profession. You know, people say, how can they not see? I honestly did not see. I can go back now and I can tell you a story about, I can picture this mother's face. Her son was brought in from daycare with seizures. He was around 18 months old. I don't remember his exact age. So the mother came in separately. She comes running into the emergency room, distraught, of course. And, you know, we tell them, oh, they're febrile seizures. They're normal, which is what we tell everybody when their kids come in.
So why do you say they're normal? Because you've been
That's
taught
what
to
I
say
was
that.
taught to say. That's what I was taught to say.
Okay.
I never questioned it.
No, of course. I'm not judging. I'm just curious.
Yeah, well, I know.
where it
I
came
totally, I understand, you know, because I've seen it from both sides. But so she says to me, she looks at me and she's like, I don't understand. How can he be having febrile seizures? He's not sick. I just took him to the pediatrician yesterday and he had his vaccinations. They wouldn't give him his shots if he was sick. And still, even then, it didn't.
But you remember it.
But once I did my research and understood what was going on, it was right there. Like, somewhere I stored that in my subconscious. And I know, as you know, I practiced as a nurse for 12 years and never heard of errors.
I feel like there's a book in you. You know, life as an RN. Think about all the things that have gone on in accidents and emergency, whatever you call it over here. What do you call it? Where did you used to work? In emergency.
In emergency, yep.
Yeah. So think about all of that. It's the kind of book that I want to pick up at the airport on my flight from New York to Austin and have it read by the time I get to the end and talk about it for 2 days. I feel like your story is that. What do you think, peeps? They agree. We need people like you to stand up and speak out because, do you know, the nurses are the bravest of the medical profession. They're so brave. They come out, so many of them come out and talk about it. But they were taking instruction from the doctors. So doctors...
And we're just not taught anything else. And I know even when I started doing my research and started to think, maybe vaccines are not good. But I said, well, it doesn't matter because you have to give them. In my mind, there wasn't an option not to give them. It was just, even if I thought they were bad, you have to give your kid vaccinations. There's no getting around it. That was the mentality I had for a long, long time. So I know there are huge barriers to cross for people to even begin to think critically about these things. It's just so ingrained in our belief system.
And sadly, very, very sadly for many and most, is we have to have injured children for us to understand it.
Yeah, It wasn't until my son was injured that I understood.